You are watching Conscious Evolution with Wes Heffernan.
So what is it like for these 18 to 21-year-olds who are traveling the country? They're eating at restaurants every night, they're in hotels, they're away from home. Are you that father figure on the road for some of them?
So I know that I am, because I've been told directly that, especially by my brother Taylor, of course my son, right, I am a father figure. But for the other two as well that I'm not related to, that's what, whether it's, you want to call it father figure, an example, right? Having Taylor, which he's getting ready to move on to his next chapter at the end of the year. He has this whole 10-year plan kind of worked out, and I'm backing him 100% on that, because I think it's part of life is this journey, right? That's what I'm sharing is my journey. Well,
right, growth.
He has his that he has somewhat planned out, right? He's gonna deviate off of it, but he has these goals that he wants to work through and trying to figure out, who he is, who he wants to be, where he wants to go, what he wants to do, all those great questions that, all of the young guys that I have working with me, my son included, are asking. And I think that's one of the neat things for me, especially with the purpose and intent of trying to tell this story and bring it to life, is having these variety of, I'm gonna bracket them all together into, this age group, and from diverse backgrounds. Like I know Caleb's background, he's my son. I know a pretty decent amount about Taylor's background because he's my brother, even though there's a big gap in, us really being family, right? I know what he's raised through. The other two, not so much. One of them, nothing, and then Josh's son, Ryan, a little bit. I know Josh well, and so I know some of that, but right, it's a completely different starting points for all four, but yet all four are basically sitting in the same place with the same questions, with the same, honestly, with the same problem, and it boils down to that internal dialogue, right? And something that came to my attention fairly recently, actually in New York, we were at an Airbnb, and this house had a whole variety of books that were kind of oriented towards what I like to read. And I can't think of the name of the author, but it was he or she, I think it's a she, The Fifth Agreement, The Four Agreements. There was this book that spoke about the internal dialogue, and I hadn't read that one while I had read several of the other books that this author has. So I picked that up and started reading it, and the whole first half of the book, I'm like, this doesn't really, I don't feel that, that's not my story. And then, and then you got to about the halfway point in the book, and it starts talking about, well, these are the problems, right? And then so what it made me realize is that the vast majority of people in this world have a horrible relationship with their internal dialogue, right? And I didn't go through that. And so there was a lot going on over this 4-month span with contemplating that particular concept. How lucky I was. And then, honestly, in a recent conversation I had with Taylor on the way home from Ohio, that large columbarium project we did, he helped me realize how grateful I need to be, the gratitude I need to show for the part of my life that my grandparents represent, which I've always known that, right? But it didn't really click until this conversation on the way home. And what was interesting, kind of side note, little side journey over here, is the moment that clicked, it was almost as if a flood of, I don't want to say information, but everything compressed again to the point that this is where these perspectives kind of come in. But so the concept of compressing something is equal to the same process of moving away from it further, right? So if you have this and you move further away, it's going to look smaller, right? And so it compressed, and it was as if coming to this realization and actually feeling the gratitude towards them allowed something to happen that brought an additional level of clarity, or octave. I don't like the idea of levels, but the different octave of clarity to what all this is about.
They're your foundation.
Right. And yeah, for sure. And they in a sense represented my internal dialogue for, you know, up until, you have to go back to, you know, one of the chapter 1, I think, but where I experienced their death, not literally, but emotionally and mentally, that night, when I let go of that compass, that moral compass that they represented, and you know, and began to insert and find my own.
Was Taylor talking about that because you had that foundation with your grandparents, and he was raised a little differently by your dad? So was he talking about that because he was missing out on that part of the foundation?
Well, he has expressed to me, again, in the essay he wrote, kind of laying out his plan, you know, the gratitude he had for me being a father figure, and that example that, you know, in a lot of ways he feels like he missed. I felt that way in some ways as well, but I had this other platform, this other stage that I lived in, this other world that I lived in with my grandparents, right? So it was just kind of dipping my toe in the water with what he had for his entire life, right? He didn't have the flip side of the coin example like I did to say this is how it should be. And I use that term lightly because should be may be something different for everyone, but you know, it should be encompassed in love and security and all these concepts that allow an individual to move beyond trying to survive, right? And this kind of plays into the same story, the same idea here, because so many of us are living in a place of survival. And when you're in that place, just trying to survive day in, day out, week in, week out, even if it's month in and month out, right? The chemistry of the body, the physiology of the body is set up in a way that you are looking for constantly the things that are going to cause you harm, the things that are going to cause you to not survive, right? Fight or flight. Fight or flight. And we live in that state of mind because we're still fighting for that sense of security and belonging and purpose, right? I think those three would kind of wrap in what feeling safe and secure to get you out of the mindset of survival.
Which is crazy because you have so many young people who get into gangs who say, I needed that group of people to feel safe.
Right.
I needed to feel like some people loved me and I needed to feel a part of something. So you're right.
And so what I've begun to realize and begin to contemplating, I had a really good talk with my son before I left out a couple weeks ago. And at least I think it was a good talk. You'd have to talk to him to know for sure. But I've been struggling not just with him, but with kind of everybody a little bit. Like, what do I mean by like trying to, this inner and outer, right? Trying to like, the conversation is dualistic in nature. And so through this conversation we were having, it got to a point where we're discussing, you know, what would the structure look like that would support these concepts and ideas of that most of this generation has, right? About, you know, well, we need homelessness. Why does that exist? Hunger. Why does that exist? Why doesn't everyone have medical care? You know, access to medicine and so forth. And there's a lot more to that, but like the structure we currently have won't support much more than what we currently are experiencing. And again, so we need a new structure, right? Something grander. And it's still going to be a boundary. there's still going to be, even if we tear this one down that we live in, there's still going to be a boundary, that a structure that, you know, we have to support our experience as a human being.
Thanks for watching. Join us next time on Conscious Evolution. Don't forget to subscribe.